Good evening. I would like to call to order the Urban Design Commission meeting of October 13th. Can we have the roll call, please?
Mark Kimmerer.
Here.
Douglas Gasick.
Here.
James Dougherty. Jim Sawhill.
Here.
Andrew Garcia.
Here.
Patricia Joyner. Jeff Dinwiddie.
Here.
Thomas Tiber.
Here. And it appears we have a quorum. Our next item of business is minutes. We don't have any minutes tonight. After that, we have our special order of business disclosures. Does anyone have any disclosures or conflicts of interest with any of the cases that are up tonight? Seeing none, that's a good thing. We can move on, and that brings us to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion for approval, please?
I would like to pull the case that's on the consent agenda and put it on the regular agenda, please.
And as soon as we get a second for the consent agenda. Thank you, Mr. Dinwiddie. Mr. Kimmerer, is it your intent to, you have some questions or some modifications to the consent agenda item?
I do have a couple questions and a possible modification in light of the email that we have on our table in front of us this evening as new information for the case.
All right, we'll go ahead and pull that agenda item. And Mr. Kimmerer, would you want to go ahead and ask any questions of staff that you have?
I think it might be better suited for the petitioner.
Okay. I think our secretary is going to correct me in my procedure here. Just hold on for 1 second. There you go. Okay, to keep our procedures correct, since we have no more consent agenda, if I can get the maker of the motion to withdraw his motion for approval, since we have nothing left to approve. And thank you, Madam Secretary, for keeping us square again. And that brings us to the item that has been pulled, case 2010-51, final approval of a landscape plan for a water reservoir at the Kinnick Heights subdivision. And it's your desire to ask a question of the petitioner?
Yes, thanks.
Can the petitioner's representative please come forward? State your name for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Terry Schoenthal. I represent Land Design North on this particular project. I represent Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility for the landscape design associated with the Elmo Road Reservoir, which is up on the hillside, and I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Mr. Kimmer?
Yes, we have an email that we received through AWWU that is from the property owner to the south of the project, and they request that no cottonwood be used on the project as they are allergic to it. Their family is. And I wanted to see if that was be a possibility to delete the cottonwood from the project.
Through the chair, Mr. Kimmerer, I've actually brought along a plan tonight. We have responded to that. We've gone out and taken a very close look at the site, and in fact, up there on the hillside, there's only one cottonwood tree existing on the site right now. Our goal of using the cottonwood trees was to try to quickly rehabilitate or at least create screening on the site. But the fact is that it's largely spruce and birch right now. And the plan that I brought along tonight shows the removal of all of the cottonwoods and, in fact, the aspens as well, to depend largely on birch for the deciduous trees on that site. And I think the point is well taken. There are very few cottonwoods on that site right now. If they've got allergies, that only compounds the matter. So we have acknowledged that comment and removed the cottonwood trees.
Okay, thank you. I had one other quick question. The original proposal had a cloth soil bag retaining wall system that was suggested that it might be used, but it looks like that might not happen now. I was just curious if that was still a possibility.
It was removed. I would point out that this is a design-build project. We've developed the landscape to this point, but in fact, within the next few weeks, most probably, and Bruce may be able to speak to that better than I, but it will be going out as an RFP for a design-build, and that contractor is going to be required to the greatest extent possible, comply with this. And in fact, if they don't, they're put into the position of having to come back to the Urban Design Commission with a substantially different plan. But the reason that we pulled that was that the grading plan has been modified somewhat since that first preliminary, such that the wells are minor, are relatively small. And the fact is that any design-build contractor taking a look at this is very likely to go with a modular concrete wall system just because of the nature of the place where those retaining walls are likely to go. They're not visible off-site, so it's not a big deal. And so we've pulled that as a specific requirement. They can put in whatever retaining wall they really want in that location and have it be suitable.
Do you have an approximate height on the walls now?
Roughly, even at the highest, they're like 5 feet high.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Kimmer, are you intending to add an additional condition of approval to this case to deal with the Cottonwood issue?
Yes.
And would the applicant have any objection or any comment on an additional condition?
I don't.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions of the applicant? Seeing none. Mr. Kimmer, can I have a motion?
Yes, I move to approve case 2010-051 for final landscape plan acceptance by the UDC with the 2 department recommendations in the staff report and adding a third to remove cottonwood from the planting plan as presented to us by the petitioner in the plan on their board this evening.
And we have a second from Mr. Tybor. You want to speak to your motion?
The project is very similar to the plan we originally saw in the preliminary application. They've gone to great lengths to hide the tank from neighboring properties and have done a great job at it. And with the deletion of the cottonwood, just using birch or other native deciduous trees, I think will be a successful project, so I'm going to support the motion.
Thank you. Are there any additional board comments? Seeing none, is there any objection to the motion? With seeing no objection, the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Schoenfeld. That brings us to our regular agenda, and we don't have any resolutions of approval, and it brings us to the public hearing. For the benefit of the audience, I'd like to review our procedures for a public hearing. At the beginning of each public hearing, we'll have a staff presentation to cover the general items and the request. Then we will open the public hearing to the public for testimony. First to be heard will be the petitioner and his representatives, which will have 10 minutes to present their case. Next, after that, we'll open it to the general public, and representatives of groups will have 5 minutes, and individuals will have 3. And with that, we'll go to our first public hearing item, which is case 2010-101. It's the petitioner is the Anchorage Community Development Authority. The request is for a sign ordinance for a parking structure. The location is within the Central Business District, Anchorage Town Site, Block 68, Lot 1B, generally located on 6th Avenue between G Street and H Street. Staff, may we have a presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of background items before we begin with the actual case. You'll notice that the format for the sign variance is a little different than you're used to. We're more closely copying the variance format used for the zoning board cases, trying to get them all standardized. To get into these a little bit, these are we're going to be looking at three very similar cases, all for sign height, three variances, all for sign height. And one thing I'd like to keep in mind, as you just mentioned, this one is downtown, as are the other two. And what we're looking at are signs that are advertising, because they're advertising a place to park, but in another sense, they're also informational or directional signs because they're telling people how and where to get to the final destination, which is the parking garage. These three parking garages that we're going to be looking at tonight are all on major streets, and the advertising and direction for parking does need to be seen from a distance. There were two items laid on the table for you tonight. One is a comment on this first variance, 2010-101. The other item is an oversized graphic which is labeled the Fifth Avenue Garage, and you can see the Easy Park sign and the circled P in orange. This is from the Fifth Avenue Garage, but the purpose of this slightly oversized handout is to show you what the sign will look like at scale with the building. So you can take this and apply it to the other two cases as well. The signs are approximately 3 feet in diameter, I believe, and leave that up to the applicant to describe in detail. Okay, beginning with the first case, 2010-101, 58 public hearing notices were mailed for this item. We did receive the one response of no objection late this afternoon. The applicant is asking for 4 signs which will be above the 14-foot limit as specified by code. Measured to the top of the sign, the applicant is asking for variances to 21 feet and 3 more to 26 feet. On page 3 of the package is a reduced diagram which shows you 2 of the sign locations, and then on page 4, the other 2 sign locations. There are better drawings back in section 4, which begins on page 32 and continues 33, 34, 35, and 36. Actual photographs from the applicant which show the signs a little bit better than the site plan does. There are 2 separate garages in this property, but they together take up one city block there between 6th and 7th Avenue and between G and H Street down near City Hall. The signs, there will be signs, new signs on each of the parking garages. 4 signs are going to be removed, 4 signs are going to be added, so we're not looking at any net change in the number of signs. And although these new proposed signs do not comply with the height, which is why they're here now for a variance, the new signs are more code compliant than the existing signs. They are smaller and somewhat lower. As you're aware, sign variances must meet 6 standards, so let us get into those. Standard 1, special conditions exist which are peculiar to the land involved and which are not applicable to other land in the same district. The department believes this standard is substantially met. The 2 garages do occupy an entire block, and the People Mover Transit Center is in the first floor of one of the garages. There's a large amount of bus traffic and other traffic on all 4 sides of the streets. The garages are in an area of tall buildings. There's quite a bit of background clutter. These signs need to be high enough so that they are visible above the buses, can be seen from a distance, and stand out from the background clutter. Both garages have only limited entry options on G streets and H streets, which is even more important that these signs be seen from a distance so that automobile drivers can maneuver immediately and safely to get into the appropriate entry lane. There aren't any true physical or topographic circumstances affecting the property. However, the size, shape, limited access to the buildings and the use and location of the signs does, in the department's opinion, present enough of a unique circumstance to justify that Standard 1 is substantially met. Standard 2, strict interpretation of the provisions of the sign ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties. The department also believes that this standard is substantially met. Lowering the signs to 14 feet, the code height limit, could cause them to be obscured by buses landscaping, or traffic signals. And if that were to happen, the signs would serve no purpose. So in that sense, the applicant would be deprived of the common rights of enjoyment, which is the visibility of signs. Standard 3, special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. The department believes this standard is substantially met. The signs are being placed at logical locations on the building, corners of the building, near intersections, near the garage entrances, and they need to be seen from a distance. Legal sign heights could be obscured by parked buses and required landscaping and do need to be higher than the 14-foot limit. Also, we need to keep in mind that on all three of these buildings, on all three of these variance cases, the applicant is working with existing signed and existing buildings, which both have some non-conforming rights. So he is having to make the best of an existing situation on all three cases. So in that sense also, the special conditions and circumstances do not result from his actions. He's having to work with what's on the ground right now. Standard number 4, granting the variance would be in harmony with the objectives of the sign ordinance and not impair integrity, character, utility, and value of neighboring properties. The department believes the standard is substantially met. These garages are surrounded by other B2B zoning districts and uses. The signs are smaller and visually less intrusive than the existing signs. There is no net change in the number of signs. Standard 5, that granting the variance will not materially add to visual clutter or visual blight. Again, standard substantially met. The signs are not out of character with the location. They are smaller and lower than the existing signs. And there is no net change to the total number of signs, 4 to be removed and 4 added. And standard number 6, the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible a reasonable use. The standard is substantially met. It's always possible to say that a sign could be lowered a few inches or a few feet. However, the signs are placed at logical locations on the building and are cited to be seen above parked buses and landscaping. The building design itself also offers limited locations for the signs, along with the driveway entrances into the garage. The department has listed 3 conditions on page 10 should the commission concur and wish to approve the variance request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Are there any questions of staff? Mr. Gesick.
Yeah, I just have one question, and that is, it seems like the difference in height is quite great, 14 to 26 feet, and I just wanted to know, in your opinion, is there room in between to lower it a little bit to get it closer in conformance with the sign standards?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gasick, always possible to reduce them somewhat. However, they are lower and smaller than the existing signs, and I am looking at the picture on page 33 as a good example, and also on page 36 as a good example, page 36 especially. Is it possible to lower them? Yes, as I said, maybe a few feet or a few inches, but also in referring to that picture on page 36, keep in mind that the applicant has to work with the existing architecture. And although I walked around all these buildings and tried to get photographs from good angles and showing the landscaping, the department believes the requests are appropriate and acceptable.
Any other questions? Evidently not. With that, I'll open the public hearing, and will the petitioner's representative please come forward? Please state your name for the record, and you have 10 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Rick Onstad. I'm the parking director at ACDA.
Thank you.
We agree with the findings by the Mooney Senior Planner, Albert. We appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and thank Al for his research. We agree with the fact that the variance meets the spirit and the intent of the 6 standards. And what I wanted to really impress upon this commission is the primary objectives of the signage project, of these projecting signs, and that is as a wayfinding tool to get motorists safely into the queuing lanes to enter the garages. The secondary benefit is support of the downtown businesses by getting people quickly into a parking space so that they can go downtown and shop, spend money, down, whatever they need to do. Cruising, traffic engineers like to call cruising VMT, vehicles per mile of travel, and we're talking carbon footprint, exhaust, carbon monoxide, all those sorts of things. So the goal here is wayfinding, get people in the garage, get them to their final destination, and we think these signs accomplish just that.
Okay. Is there anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions of the applicant? Mr. Dinwiddie.
How did these signs compare to signs in other cities, Portland, Seattle? You see the same kind of signs on their garages.
We do. That's an excellent question. In fact, the design professional that we hired as a consultant on this project had designed the signage in Portland and in Vancouver, BC. So these signs are, in fact, a little bit smaller than most of the exterior projecting signs that are being used in Vancouver, BC, and Portland. I'm not sure, Mr. Dinwiddie of Seattle, the dimensions of their signs.
Mr. Gasek?
I'm just going to ask, how was the height determined on these? How was the height placement determined on these signs?
We actually had 3 site visits by our design professional. He came up, took hundreds of photographs from his vehicle. He'd pull over at a spot, for instance, on 5th Avenue, inbound from Eagle River, approaching the 5th Avenue garage, and determine at what point on the facade of the garage would that sign need to be so that he could pick up visually the P sign in time for him to make the proper lane changes to get in the queue. So photography and actually, on the ground in the car circling the facilities to look, and then measurements.
Sorry. And the primary constraints here were really the vegetation primarily rather than the buses?
I'm sorry?
The primary constraint here was really the vegetation rather than the buses were also mentioned, but it seems here that the primary constraint really is the vegetation.
Well, the buses at the 6th and 7th Avenue garage locations were the primary impediment to determining the height of the signs. At the other 2 facilities there, of course, are no people mover transit centers there. So the primary focus in those locations was capturing the eye of the motorist in time to reach the queue.
So the buses were the primary on this case? And then I have a follow-up for that. How tall are the buses?
Perhaps I'm jumping ahead and looking at the entire, all 3 applications, but the 6th and 7th Avenue garage location, the primary driver behind the height of the signs was the fact that there's red curb bus staging on all 4 sides of the street around those 2 garages.
How tall is a bus? A standard bus?
I'd be guessing. I'd be guessing.
I mean, it's lower than
18 to 20 feet.
Okay.
Is there any other questions of the applicant? Apparently not. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to open the public hearing to anybody else from the public that wishes to testify. Is there anyone else that wishes to testify? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and the matter rests with the board. I would entertain a positive motion. Someone's going to step up and make this motion, right? Mr. Dinwiddie, thank you. Second by Mr. Garcia. Our second disappeared. Come back. No, Mr. Dinwiddie. Would you?
I would like to make a motion that we approve these sign variances as duly noted with no extra conditions.
Thank you. May I have a second? Mr. Kimmer. Mr. Dinwiddie, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I think that the staff is, all their points were well researched and well thought out. I think that they meet the conditions of variances. I think they took some serious thought on what are required for variances and have thought that out. And I think that's a good public need. And I like the point of the petitioner that they're a wayfinding tool, and I recommend that we approve the variance.
Thank you. Mr. Kimmer, do you have any comments?
Yes, I'll be supporting the motion. Specifically, the variance standards 1 through 6, I believe, are met per staff's description. Their staff report is very concise. I think that it's a fairly straightforward request for the variance. The graphics that were provided showed me that. It's very easy to see. They did hire a design professional to study the site and determine what the best heights for the signs were based on being in a vehicle and the approach from the garage from those different directions. So I am going to support the motion with the staff recommendations 1 through 3.
Is there any other comments from the board? Mr. Gasek.
Yeah, when looking at variances, obviously I always take a very close look at these and take careful consideration when we're looking to approve a variance, since it goes against the standard overall. So in these, I think overall the 6 standards have been substantially met, and there was careful consideration of it. I do agree with standard 6 that it probably could have been lowered a little bit, and I wish it would have to get it closer in conformance with the sign standards. But overall, I'll be supporting the motion too.
Is there any other board comments? Evidently not. We'll go ahead and... Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, that motion passes. That brings us to our next case, case 2010-114. The petitioner is the Anchorage Community Development Authority. It's for another sign variance, and it's for a sign variance located at the parking structure in the 2P zone, located in Anchorage Original Town Site, Block 71, Lot 1A, generally located south of 6th Avenue between D and E Street. Staff, would you please make a presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I might editorialize just for a second on Mr. Gasek's final comments on the previous case. Yes, you are confined to finding 4 of the 6 standards, and you do have to adhere to that language pretty closely. But the department's interpretation of the word substantially met in the finding, we believe gives the Commission a fair degree of latitude in moving either side. In the old days, a variance standard had to be met yes or no, no shades of gray. Substantially gives you some shades of gray to work with when you're considering these things. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For this case, 52 public hearing notices were mailed. We did not receive any responses from the public or the Community Council. This variance request is for 2 signs with heights above 14 feet, measured to the top of the sign at 26 and 27 feet. This is for the J.C. Penney parking garage. Page 3 is a site plan of the property. see the main entrance and ramp on the north side of the property and the secondary access to the garage at the southwest corner of the building. Again, several existing non-conforming signs on this building. The building and the signs probably both have certain legal rights, and we'll be dispensing with those because we're getting new signs if the case is approved. The applicant's going to replace one projecting sign with a new projecting sign and add a second projecting sign at the entrance to the parking garage ramp, so net gain of one sign. Neither of the new signs, again, are within current code height limit of 14 feet, but they are smaller and lower than the existing signs. To the standards, and I apologize if this starts to sound a little monotonous. Standard 1, special conditions exist which are peculiar to the land. The department believes the standard is substantially met. The main entry ramp to the JCPenney garage requires quick and difficult maneuvering to enter safely if you've ever been into it. The entry ramp is narrow, is almost within the 6th and E Street intersections, and is next to a sidewalk and crosswalk. It is important that the directional sign be visible from as great a distance as possible so that drivers have ample time to decelerate and maneuver. The secondary entrance to the garage at the southwest corner is very unobtrusive and does also require a good deal of advance warning, which is the reason for the projecting sign at that location. So again, although there are no physical or topographic circumstances, the building, the shape, the location of the entrances are somewhat unique and do justify the need for the signs, so the department believes Standard 1 is substantially met. Standard 2, strict interpretation of the provisions of the ordinance would deprive the applicant of common rights of enjoyment. The standard is substantially met. Lowering the signs to the code limit of 14 feet could cause them to be lost in background clutter of other tall buildings and not provide the adequate sight distance needed by drivers to enter these two relatively difficult garage entrances. Standard 3, special conditions and circumstances do not result from actions of the applicant. Again, the signs are being placed at logical locations, corners of the building, near intersections, and near the garage entrances, and they need to be seen from a good distance. Also, the applicant is again dealing with an existing building. He has limited options as to where the entrances of the buildings are and limited places on the buildings where the signs can be placed. So the department believes that this standard is substantially met. Standard number 4, that granting the variance is in harmony with the objectives of the sign ordinance and not impair the integrity, character, utility, and value of neighboring properties. The standard is substantially met. The garages are surrounded by B2A and B2B zoning districts and uses, and the new signs are smaller and less visually intrusive than the existing signs. Standard 5, granting the variance does not materially add to visual clutter. The standard is substantially met. The size, shape, color of the signs are not out of character with the locations. We do have a net gain of one sign, but the garage does have two entrances. The signs are smaller and lower than the existing signs. And Standard 6, the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible a reasonable use of the property. Well, again, signs can always be lowered a few inches or a few feet, but the signs are at logical locations on the building, and they are sited to be seen by traffic, above traffic and landscaping. And this building in particular has limited access to the garage entrances. There are very few options for sign height and location. If the commission concurs, the department has 3 conditions on page 9 for the recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Are there any questions of staff? I had one question, and that was dealing with sign C. And is there a projecting sign at that location now?
Mr. Chairman, the photograph for that is the color photograph on page 11. And from what I see in the picture and from what I recall on the site visit, no, I would say there's not a projecting sign on the front of the building.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of staff? Apparently not. With that, I'll open the public hearing, and the petitioner, please come forward. State your name for the record, and you have 10 minutes.
Rick Onstad, ACDA, Parking Director.
Thank you.
You bet.
Please make your presentation.
We agree with the findings of the Community Planning Department. The J.C. Penney garage, as Mr. Barrett mentioned, has 2 entries. If you've ever been downtown on the freeway, I'll call it, 6th Avenue eastbound, at the corner of E and 6th, where the ramp entrance is to Penney's, you see there's a very unique traffic and pedestrian pattern there. 80% of the transients who drive into the J.C. Penney garage enter via eastbound 6th Avenue up that ramp. For whatever reason, folks just haven't figured out that there's another entrance to the garage from northbound E Street, which is also a one-way. So what we want to do is we want to use these wayfinding signs to make sure that we're advertising the fact that we have 2 entrances to minimize traffic at 6th and E and get better balance in the garage. The other key I wanted to make sure to impress upon the commission was this is kind of techno speak for parking operators, but the garage itself structurally is a double helix style garage, meaning that when you go in off the 6th Avenue ramp from eastbound 6th Avenue, as you traverse upward in the garage, you only see half of the parking spaces. To come in on E from the other entrance, you see the opposite half. So to gain good utilization of all the parking spaces in the garage, we need to achieve balance at entries at both of the entrances. That's particularly important from PFD time on through the holiday season. So once again, in conclusion, I think that these wayfinding signs are tastefully done. We're highly professional to do them. They're at heights that maximize the vision of the motorist. And we'd like your support.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant? Mr. Garcia.
I have a question in regards to the second sign that says Easy Park. It appears that you're removing the sign that gives the clearance elevation and replacing this with the sign that just says Easy Park. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is there going to be, coming from someone who drives a four-wheel vehicle that's an SUV and has a rack on the top,
Yeah.
I have found myself before stuck at the entrance to a garage and unable to easily get out. Do you think it's a good idea to deny drivers the information of knowing if their car is too big to fit in, especially a ramp that you have to enter at such speeds and it doesn't really leave you a good way to get out of?
Part of this overall Easy Park project includes internal wayfinding. So the clearance signs above the entries will be converted to rubber signs. They'll be larger and more bold font that show the clearance above the lane, so that it's not part of the variance application because we don't need to file for a variance to place those there, but the motorist ability to figure out whether or not their vehicle has a profile that can safely enter the garage will be greatly enhanced when the project is over.
Okay, I was just concerned about that. And I never knew there was an entrance to this place from the north side either.
Yeah, try it sometime. I worked here 10 years before I knew.
Thank you. Mr. Dinwiddie?
Are all these signs the same color and look?
Yes, sir, they are.
Mr. Gasek?
My question is about the sign and locations he's brought up a little bit previously. Is that sign location, it doesn't seem like it is the best location for a sign since it's already up the ramp and you're already on the ramp, and then you're being noticed, the sign is being recognized really up there. And then I'm also concerned with the Easy Park sign at the entrance to the ramp being 4 feet tall. Is that other sign at the top of the ramp going to be completely visible, or is it going to be blocked somewhat from that, especially when you're at street level approaching the ramp?
The projecting Easy Park sign for which we're requesting the variance is actually going to mount,
Where the existing, right?
it's going to mount on one of the columns on the facade of the building. If you're looking at page 11, I believe it is, you see the elevator tower in the background. If you count 3 columns west of the elevator tower, the sign is actually going to be mounted on the column. So the motorists on 6th Avenue eastbound, perception-wise, they're going to be looking at the P sign, and it's going to appear that it's right over the apex of the ramp.
Right, and then there's going to be another Easy Park sign where the clearance sign currently is located.
Right.
So I'm just looking at potential redundancy and hopefully possibly eliminating one of those signs to simplify it and get a clear entrance.
That's definitely something we can consider. The real, what we have there is atrociously unattractive. Part of the reason for this program, the only real bona fide sign that we have to have in that location on the ramp is the clearance.
The clearance. Okay, great. So if the clearance one stayed and the other one would remove, that would be acceptable?
That would be fine with us.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dinwiddie.
Since we're looking at page 11, what floor is the height going to be on the sign that's on the column?
Which sign again, please?
Page 11, the sign, the extending sign that is going to be mounted on the column. What floor would that be on?
That sign will be at its highest point 27 feet, and that will put it on the third floor. A level we call 3 North.
Would it be, sorry for the redundancy question, but would it be along the yellow concrete facade, or would it be in between the opening? Between basically 3rd and 4th floor, or would it be right along the concrete facade at the 3rd floor, the wall?
It's actually going to be on the orange column,
Right.
on the facade, between the 2nd and 3rd level.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Mr. Barrett, you got a question?
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask Mr. Onstott to refer to the picture on page 33 of the staff packet to answer the question and let us know if that photograph and rendering are accurate. I think it gives a better sense of how high the sign will be.
Okay. Yes, that is an accurate depiction.
Okay. Mr. Kimmer?
Yes, thanks. I actually just want to clarify Commissioner Gassick's comment on which sign may be possible to delete, and I believe he was speaking about sign C on page 29. Commissioner Gassick.
Correct.
Yes, okay, thank you. And that wouldn't impede drivers recognizing where they need to go from a distance to the west on 6th?
No, not at all.
Thank you.
I think the concept with that, folks, was we've got, our designer has a concept whereby we have also in the future LED signs that show the motorist how many spaces are available, how many are vacant in the garage and next to the Easy Park, so folks know whether or not they should even commit to the ramp.
Mr. Garcia?
I had a follow-up question on that Easy Park sign. I know the sign that has the big P on it is an LED lit sign. There's no detail of the Easy Park sign. Is that also an illuminated sign then?
No, it was not designed to be an illuminated sign.
So my question for Commissioner Gassick and yourself would be, in Alaska where it's dark much of in the winter, if you're eliminating the P sign that's on that third column, the location C, is that going to make it more difficult for people to notice the entryway and be aware that there's parking there in the wintertime, or do you feel comfortable with that?
I don't think so, because we do have lights on the ramp.
Okay.
So the ramp itself is,
Artificially lit?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're in the middle of a lighting improvement project, which will make that ramp lit up like a Christmas tree here in the next couple of months.
Okay, and then is that, I'm assuming that there's no mention of it, but just the regular letters that say J.C. Parking, J.C. Penney Parking, that sign's remaining, correct?
Yes, those are remaining.
Are there any other questions of the applicant? Evidently not. Thank you for your testimony. At this time, I would like to open the public hearing for testimony. Is there anyone wishing to testify? Is there anyone wishing to testify? Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. The matter rests with the board. I will entertain a positive motion. Mr. Gasick.
I move to approve UDC case number 2010-114 for meeting the sign variance requirements with the added condition that sign C be removed, sign location C be deleted.
So that's staff conditions 1 through 3 with an additional 4?
Right. That sign location C be removed.
Okay. And we have a second, Mr. Garcia. Okay. I just want to make sure with the additional condition you're still on board. So
I knew it was coming.
Thank you. Mr. Gasick, would you speak to your motion, please?
Yeah, after looking at all the 6 conditions that we used to see if sign variances substantially meet the requirements, they seem to meet them, especially since the existing facility has a bit different situation than the surrounding buildings, that being a garage, and it needs to advertise quickly and often get people inside it while still in their vehicles. The strict interpretation of the provisions would deprive the applicant of the rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district. That seems substantially met. And the variance granted with the condition seems to be the minimum variance that would make it possible to have that substantial economic use of the land. So standard 6 is substantially met also. And those would be the 3 that I would highlight.
Thank you. Are there additional staff comments? Mr. Barrett, you had a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A point of confusion on my part. I just want to make sure I'm understanding, because I thought I heard a couple of conflicting things. If we could refer again to the photographs on page 33. In the initial discussion, I did not think it was the projecting P sign that was being deleted.
It was my intention for that one to be deleted, the projecting P sign and the Easy Park sign to remain in the place where the current public parking clearance 6-7 sign currently exists.
Thank you, sir. And I would ask if the applicant had the same understanding.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe we're sharing some confusion.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. I guess I would ask the board to indulge me for a second, and I would like to ask the petitioner's applicant to please come forward. I guess it was through the questioning I was pretty clear to me that it was the intent of the board to question whether that additional projecting sign that was going to be on the 6th Avenue side was indeed needed and could be deleted. And it was my understanding from your response that you were okay with that being deleted. Is that still the case?
It's not. I understood that the suggestion was made to eliminate the Easy Park sign from the clearance rail above the ramp. The projecting P sign we'd like to remain.
Okay. Thank you. So I guess that clarifies the applicant's position, and thank you for that information. And then we will get back on track with the project. We have a motion before us, and is there any other board comments?
I have a question for the applicant. Sorry.
No problem.
But that is, so your suggestion would be that the clearance sign would stay in place, but no Easy Park sign on it, correct?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Is there any additional board comments on the motion we have in front of us? Is there any desire to modify the motion we have in front of us? Mr. Dinwiddie.
I guess the petitioner's request would be to leave the sign C and remove the Easy Park. But my understanding would be that they would still remove the clearance sign with a later rubber sign that goes up. So basically the clutter will go away for the sign that's over the bar now. It'll be something new there as well, and that would reduce the redundancy.
The 2x4 that's shown in the diagram?
If you're going to make comments, we're going to have you come forward so we can get that on the record, please.
The 2x4 shown above the ramp, just under the clearance, 6 feet 7 inches with the stripes, the stripe tape, that would be replaced by a rubber sign that says enter or entry, and it would say 6 feet 7 inches on the rubber itself. Easy Park would have replaced the white sign that says public parking $1, clearance 6.7, but Easy Park isn't mandatory in this application. The clearance is, so we're willing to concede the Easy Park sign to avoid some clutter.
Can I withdraw and then start clean? Is that an okay thing?
I think it would be cleaner for us at this point to amend the motion we have on the floor if we would like to delete condition number 4 or substitute a new number 4 or however the board would like to go forward, but that's the procedure I would like to use. No, he did not. Mr. Kimmer.
Just one quick question for the petitioner. Is the Easy Park sign smaller than the existing clearance sign?
It is. It is about a foot. It's about a foot shorter and 6 inches slimmer.
Thank you.
Mr. Dinwiddie.
I guess I think that the consolidation of the same signs on all the parking garages downtown is what the petitioner is trying to achieve here. And I think that sign C should stay, and it consolidates, basically every single sign is going to be the same, every single entryway is going to be the same, and it creates uniformity that I think we should leave intact. So with that, I would like to
Make a motion to amend?
make a friendly motion to amend the condition 4 to leave sign C.
So you would like to delete condition 4?
That's correct.
Great. Is that okay to the maker of the motion to have a friendly amendment, or would you like us to go ahead and vote on this one?
If I could make a friendly to the friendly and remove the sign D, would be acceptable.
I'm okay with that. I think that the board seems to.
And that was B or D?
D as in
D as Doug. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Okay, so we have an amended motion on the floor. Is there additional discussion?
I would like to speak to the motion as well.
Well, you got to get in the queue. You're using our machines tonight.
It's okay. He was speaking. I was just, it's okay. He can go. Mark, if you want to speak, you can.
Mr. Garcia? Our seconded has disappeared.
Should I not have disappeared? I pulled it because the petitioner was called up again.
If you can just get your second back on the board, and then we'll allow you to talk. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. You have some comments?
I just want to make sure that in our current amendment is that sign C goes in, sign D goes out, and in addition to that, the public parking $1 clearance 6-foot 7-inch sign is also removed. Is what I believe we're discussing.
I believe that's where we are currently.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I hadn't heard that public parking sign was also being removed in the amendment. So adding that stipulation to the amendment, that's really all I wanted to say. If that's acceptable as a friendly addition to the addition.
I think it's a clarification of the amendment. Thank you. Mr. Kimmer?
Yes, I would like to say that I guess I wouldn't support that additional recommendation number 4, because I think the sign that they are suggesting for sign D is smaller. It's going to be more in line with the graphics on the other garages downtown, more modern. I think it's going to be better to change it to the Easy Park sign. So I guess I wouldn't support the motion for adding number 4. I would suggest that we delete number 4 entirely and use the signs that the petitioner is portraying.
If that's your wish, Mr. Kimmer, I think the best thing to do at this point is to make a motion to eliminate condition number 4, and then we'll go ahead and vote on that and see if there's support to do that.
Okay, I make a motion to, are we starting all over?
No, we are not.
Okay.
We have a motion on the floor with 4 conditions.
I move to delete recommendation number 4 as proposed by Commissioner Gassick.
Thank you, Mr. Kimmer. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Dinwiddie. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, for the reasons I stated before. I think we got a little confused on the signs right off. I was confused. I thought we were eliminating the small p, which the questioning that I had, wouldn't they be able to see that from farther to the west on 6th Avenue? That seems totally logical to have that sign there. But I don't see why we would want to leave an older, larger sign in place when we could have a smaller sign with graphics that match the other signs that are going up in the variance. So that's why I chose to delete number 4.
Thank you. Mr. Dinwiddie, do you have any comments to add?
I think it's important that, I stated earlier that the P signs, there's going to be conformity throughout all the garages downtown, and I think that's what the petitioner's goal is, and I strongly support that. I'm not as the little sign, it doesn't bother me as much, but I think that sign C should stay, and they should stay on all of them, and I support Mr. Kimmer's motion.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Dinwiddie. I also will be supporting the amendment to the motion. Are there any other comments? Mr. Tybor?
Yes, I would support the amendment to the motion as well. I think that the application it met all the 6 standards. The original application met all of the 6 standards for the variance in my mind, and the signage is visually, it's visually appealing and serves a purpose of safety and traffic control, and I think it's fine as is without condition 4. Okay.
Thank you. Any other board comments? Is there objection to the amendment?
Yeah, there's objection, because I'm going to be voting no on the amendment. I think it was in good faith that we had a discussion with the commissioner, or the applicant, and he was willing to reduce some of the visual clutter that was going to be there, and I think that's a great resolution that could have come out of this, with that sign actually going away for a new one to come later in the future. So I think we had a great resolution in this case working forward, and it doesn't seem to be going in that direction now, so I won't be supporting the amendment.
Okay. Since there are objection, let's use our machines to vote on the amendment to the motion. Again? I vote up here. Okay. Got everybody? That motion carries. We're now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes. Now we're back to the main motion. Is there any additional comments on the main motion? Is there objection to the main motion? Oh, Mr. Gesick, sorry.
I object, because I'm going to be changing my support for the main motion also on the previously stated reasons.
Okay, so you're objecting to the main motion? Since there is objection, we will go ahead and use our machines on the main motion. Yes, they did. Yeah, they did well on their findings.
Okay. All right, let me get this back together here. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to take just a second here.
And that motion carries. So that brings us to our next case. You'll be back.
See you soon.
We'll keep it warm for you. Our next case is case 2010-115. The petitioner is the Anchorage Community Development Authority. It's a request for a sign variance for a parking structure. The sign variance is for an existing parking structure in the B2A district. It's located in the Anchorage Original Town Site, Block 45, Lot 1A, generally located south of 4th Avenue between B and C Streets. Staff, may we have a presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 52 public hearing notices were mailed for this item. We did not receive any responses from the public nor from the Community Council. This is a request to allow 3 signs at a height above 14 feet above grade. Measured to the top of the signs, they will be 19 feet, 19 feet, and 36 feet. This is the garage commonly known as the 5th Avenue parking garage. And the applicant mentioned, I think he mentioned the 6th Avenue freeway on the previous case. I would suspect that in terms of traffic volume and traffic speeds, this garage is the one that is most subjected to high-speed, high-volume traffic because of 4th and 5th Avenue. That's just an aside. It does slightly relate to one of the standards. This is the 5th Avenue garage, bounded by 4th Avenue, 5th Avenue, and B and C streets. There, again, are several existing nonconforming signs on the building, and the building itself may have some nonconformities. The applicant proposes to replace 2 projecting signs with 3 new projecting signs, 2 at the same place as the signs they're replacing, and 1 new sign at the corner of B and 4th, so a net gain of 1 sign. And again, none of the signs will be within the 14-foot limit, but they are smaller and lower than the existing non-conforming signs. Regarding the standards, Standard 1, special conditions exist. The standard is substantially met. This building is a little different than the other 2. It has an awning and a retail facade that run the length of the building along 5th and along C, and you can see that pretty clearly in the photographs if you're not recalling what the building itself looks like. There are also partial awnings and a facade on 4th and B. Signs at the 14-foot height limit would interfere with the awning and or the facade or be partially obscured by traffic signals or street lights. Because of this, the next logical location is to attach the signs one parking level up on the building. The only entry ramp for this garage is located mid-block on B Street, so drivers needed as much advance notice as possible so that they can safely maneuver. The department believes the standard is substantially met. Standard number 2, strict interpretation of the provisions of the sign code would deprive the applicant. The standard is substantially met. Lowering the signs to 14 feet would probably cause them to be lost or obscured behind the awnings or the building facade or hidden by the street or traffic lights and thus serve no function. Standard number 3, special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. Again, the signs are being placed at logical locations, corners of buildings, near intersections, and near the entrance, and they do need to be seen from a good distance because these are high-volume, high-speed streets. The building design and facade also present limitations for the sign location. This is an existing building, and the applicant is having to deal with the existing architecture. The department believes Standard 3 is substantially met. Standard number 4, that granting the variance would be in harmony with the objective of the sign ordinance and not impair the integrity, character, utility, and value of neighboring properties. The standard is substantially met. The garage is surrounded by B2A and B2B zoning districts and uses. The signs are not out of character with the area, and they are smaller and less intrusive than the existing signs. The standard is substantially met in the department's opinion. Standard 5, granting the variance does not materially add to visual clutter or visual blight. The standard is substantially met. The signs are not out of character with the area. There is a net gain of 1 sign. 2 projecting signs will be removed and 3 added. But again, the signs are smaller and will be lower than the existing signs. And Standard 6, the variance granted is the minimum that will make possible a reasonable economic use. The standard is substantially met. Again, it's always possible to lower the sign a few inches. However, in this case, especially with the building facade and the awnings, these signs need to be high enough to be above the building limitations itself and to be seen by traffic at a good distance, clear of any landscaping. The department recommends approval subject to 3 conditions on page 9. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Are there any questions of staff? My screen is showing voting, so I can't see if anyone's queued up. On the floor? Okay, thank you. Apparently not. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing and ask the applicant or his representative to come forward. And Rick, please state your name again for the record.
Rick Onstop, Parking Director, ACDA.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, you'll probably not be surprised to hear me say that we support the findings of the Community Planning Department. Specific to the Fifth Avenue garage, our designer was very clear with us when he came up and did his site surveys that the human eye and uniformity are very critical when it comes to grabbing people's attention. You'll notice that sign A over the entry to the Fifth Avenue garage is going to be set at a maximum height of 19 feet. What the goal was is to have all of the projecting P signs, all 3 of the projecting P signs on the garage at a height of 19 feet. So the human eye would be trained to look at that level, to look for the wayfinding. However, the challenge we had was on sign the corner of 5th and B Street, sign location C. Was, as Al Barrett mentioned, the facade of the building. In putting that sign at 19 feet, we're conflicting with the facade, and the oncoming traffic from 5th Avenue from the east would not be able to see it in time to commit to the inside lane to turn right onto B Street and enter the garage. That's why the 36-foot height on that sign. And also, the max height of that sign at 36 moves the max height down of the existing sign that we're replacing by about 4 feet.
Okay. Do you have any further comments for us?
No, sir.
Thank you. Is there any questions of the applicant? Mr. Garcia.
Sign location B, it looks like, it doesn't look like, you're replacing the address of the building with an Easy Park sign, is that correct?
That's correct.
Are you relocating an address anywhere else on this building? I don't see any pictures that showed an address on the building.
I know we're required by code to have that for the fire department. We're aware of that, but we haven't picked a final spot for that address yet.
Is that sign for the address just going to be the same letters, just relocated to another location, most likely?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That was my one question, and right on with the fire department. But my other statement about this is, do you feel it's redundant to have a projecting sign located what appears to be 6 feet to 8 feet directly over another sign that says parking? And the other item on this one is, as there's no traffic coming towards the Easy Park sign at this location, I don't really see what benefit that sign is serving in regards to wayfinding.
Okay. Question one, I'll address that. The projecting P sign, sign A in front of the entry, is meant to grab the attention of motorists that are northbound from 6th Avenue on B Street. The major artery for people from South Anchorage to get to the 5th Avenue garage for shopping is 6th Avenue eastbound, turn left on B Street, so they need to be able to see the P sign as they commit to that. Also, 4th Avenue at B Street is two-lane traffic, so we have quite a few people that actually use 4th Avenue as opposed to 5th to come in from East Anchorage, the bases in Eagle River, and to do that they have to turn left from 4th Avenue onto B Street. In that situation, they need to be able to see the P sign as well to know that that garage is open to public parking. Easy Park, again, what Easy Park does, in the words of our designer, is by placing Easy Park above the entrances, above all entrances to all 3 site locations for garages, it establishes a brand identity and uniformity of who's operating the garage when people commit to enter.
But there isn't uniformity in the Easy Park sign itself. In the previous application, you had a 4-foot high by 12-foot long sign. In this application, you have a 2-foot high by basically 30-foot long sign. So, I mean, they might be uniform in appearance, or the design, but they're not uniform in size, unlike the parking, the big P sign that you're promoting through the area, which I think is a great idea.
Yeah, you also notice when you look at the entry, you see 2 boxes that don't have arrows pointing to them, 2 small boxes above entry lanes. Those say entry and exit. Those boxes would be removed. I don't think that was marked up on the plan, but those boxes would be removed from the facade because they would no longer be necessary. Remember, the rubber clearance signs will say enter or exit on them, as long as convey the feet and inches of the clearance.
Okay. Anything further?
Would you object to having uniform size sign for that Easy Park and making that the same size as the sign in the previous application?
No.
You wouldn't object to that?
No.
That's all I had.
Thank you. Mr. Dinwiddie?
Yeah, that last question was one of the ones I thought. But there was also sign D, as in David, isn't really indicated. It shows a location on, but it doesn't show what kind of sign you're going to do, if you're going to do one at all.
What page is that, please?
The page 34 shows D indicated, and then as to what location it's going to be. But there is no, you skip from, when you show each one of your signs, you go from a P sign as location C, and then you go straight to another P sign at location E. There is no indication of what D is going to be. there's a color graphic on sheet number 15 that I assume that's location D. It looks like it is on the corner of 4th and C.
Right, D is a flush mount. It's an existing flush mount rectangular shaped sign. It simply says parking with an arrow to the left. Southbound C Street traffic north of 4th Avenue. The original intent of that sign was to get people to turn left onto 4th and find their way to the garage. This plan just has that old, ugly blue and white sign that says parking with an arrow replaced with a sign that fits the theme of the Easy Park branding effort. And we didn't, it's included in your diagrams because we have a comprehensive signage and graphics standard that we're applying to all of our facilities, but it's not one of the signs we were applying for an exception variance approval for.
Okay. Any further comments, Mr. Newman?
No, that answers my question.
Okay. Is there anybody else with questions of staff? Oh, Mr. Tybor?
Of staff or of the...
Or the applicant, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Onside, I'm having a little bit of difficulty reading on page 36, the sign for sign location B, but it looks like it actually is going to be an illuminated sign that's going to have that, is that going to be an LED display on it that's going to show the number of parking spots available?
Right. The concept was that after the exterior projected P signs project is completed, that we would move to more of internal wayfinding. And this particular sign, in addition to saying Easy Park to determine the brand, would also have an LED sign that would be linked to our electronic entry loops and would tell the motorist how many spaces were available in the garage.
Okay. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Is there any other questions of the applicant? Apparently not. Thank you.
Thank you.
And at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing to testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? Is there anyone else wishing to testify? Hearing and seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing, and the matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please? Mr. Garcia.
I'd like to have a motion to approve. Is this where I do my findings or in a moment?
Excuse me?
Is this where I add an amendment? Or
Subject to conditions of
I'd like to,
staff?
that's the, okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve based on the comments made by staff 1 through 3. I'd like to add a number 4 amendment, which would be that the Easy Park sign at location B that is made to be the same size and style as the sign in the previous application, which was case
Maybe we can reach into that case and find some dimensions that we can include in our motion.
48 inches high by, or where was that one?
To be 48 inches high
By 11 feet 6 inches wide.
by 11 feet 6 inches wide. Great. And we have a second, Mr. Kimmer. Mr. Garcia, would you like to speak to your motion?
I feel that the applicant met all the requirements for a sign variance. I feel that the P is a very good wayfinding and that there's great uniformity in their signs throughout the whole 3 projects that they've put in a variance application for. And I plan on, supporting my motion.
Great, thank you. Mr. Kimmer, do you have some additional comments?
Sure. I will be supporting the motion. The variance standards 1 through 6 have been met as described by staff for the reasons described by staff very clearly. The application itself is very clear, and I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Are there additional comments from the board? Mr. Tybor?
Yeah, my comment is actually on the on the additional condition to change or to modify the dimensions of the sign, and it looks like while it would actually modify it to be higher, it also shrinks the length of it, and by shrinking the length of it, that cuts off the ability to have the LED parking count display. So I guess I thought that was a great idea that they included that in there, and I support the motion if the applicant, I guess I'm wondering if the applicant has any concerns over that impacting the usability of their intent of this application.
Sounds like we have a question for the applicant. Would you please come forward and speak into the microphone? Thank you.
The answer to that question is no. Reducing the length of the sign will not eliminate the possibility of using LED signage to apprise the public of number of spaces. We might have to make the Easy Park less prominent, but the Easy Park is part of marketing for our brand rather than wayfinding, so I find that a reasonable solution.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Dinwiddie.
I will also be supporting the motion for the same reasons I supported the other two cases. I think that they meet all the conditions. I think that they provide a useful wayfinding tool. They also, in particular this case, it gets rid of some old clutter and some old signs that are fairly unattractive. I would like to, I don't think branding is such a big issue with the parking garages that are always full, so I don't think you need to sell it any harder, so I'm fully supportive of reducing the size sign, and I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Dinwiddie. Any other comments from the board? Is there objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes. Thanks for being our entertainment of the evening. That brings us to appearance requests, and I don't believe we have any appearance requests. And that brings us to reports. I don't have anything to report tonight. Sharon, do you have anything to share with us?
Yes, I just had a couple of things. One, I just wanted to report back on the results of the tour we had, viewing past projects that the UDC had approved. And those of you who are on the tour can pipe in as well. We talked about it a little bit before the meeting started tonight. And I think what we most saw in visiting some of the school projects was the complete lack of maintenance. Diamond High School sticks out as a memorable example of that. And then we saw a newly finished school, which was Sand Lake Elementary School. That's the Japanese immersion school, if it triggers memories for everyone. And what we noted there was, and the reason I mention this is that when we review future plans and we see the same thing happen, we want to question, the petitioner about it and why, or the designer, why they're doing it that way. But right in front of the school, there were planting beds, and then the sidewalk, and instead of using shredded bark mulch as the ground, as the mulch, they had used pea gravel, and it was spread really all over the sidewalks, and it was quite a maintenance headache, and it was, they would have to be out there all the time sweeping it from the sidewalk back into the bed, and no doubt the next day it's all out on the sidewalk again. There are a couple of things they could have done. It could have been lower, like an inch, at least an inch or 2 inches below the height of the sidewalk. That would have kept it in more, or just not use gravel in that application, where there's a high traffic volume right in front of the school. And then Diamond High School was just overgrown with weeds and grass, all the planting beds that didn't look like anything had been done ever. And those of you who jump in, and that was, the two big memories for me. And we stopped and got out a few sites and walked the sites, and other places were just drive-bys, like a lot of the road projects we just drove by and looked at. But any of the others want to comment?
I was there as well, and same thoughts Sharon had. I think the mulch is the way it is. I was wondering why they would ever put that in, just probably so kids can't throw a larger rock mulch at windows or at each other. So you can kind of see how they came to that solution, but it really isn't a good one. It actually could be a slipping hazard on the sidewalks too. It's just like ball bearings on the walks. The maintenance was incredible how bad Diamond looked, and there's invasive weeds in the shrub beds. It's just all over the place. I'm not sure what the solution is, but it kind of makes you think it should just be trees in these landscapes almost. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but not much, if anything, is getting taken care of there. We did see a nice low-income housing project over by Begich Middle School, which if you haven't been over there, I don't know the name of the project.
Is it Grass Creek?
I think it is, yeah. It was nice. If you guys are ever over that way, it was quite well done with, I think they call it an alley, but they basically have the back doors are garages, so there's a vehicle circulation that's paved and garage doors, but the opposite side is the front door and actually opens up onto a green space with stormwater drainage down the center with small bridges crossing over, and it was nicely done, and there were people hanging out outside. It just looked like a really cool project, so it was nice to see that in Anchorage. And I don't recall that when me seeing that case, so I don't know if any of you other guys have. But that's it.
I didn't go on the tour, but I pretty much know almost all these by heart. One thing, Grass Creek is a great project, and one of the disappointments about Grass Creek is Grass Creek's design was done in a sense that all those bridges and all those, they had creeks going through there, and there was supposed to be tall grass, and there was a lot of calamagrostis, and it was basically you have a manicured section, and then you have an unmanicured section, and the creek was supposed to be a flowing dry creek. Well, the maintenance crew is a little over-maintained, and they mowed everything, and so, you've lost the design concept of that, but, I'm with Mark. I think that it was a great project. It looks really good, and I think Chia is the one who actually maintains that. They do a really good job with all their projects. They have their own maintenance crew, and I think that the district could definitely learn a thing or two. Diamond's probably 2 years, the last 2 summers, it's been the school district that's been maintaining Diamond or lack thereof, and it does show. And maybe there is a different way to do some beds that you won't have that out of control mess that you got. And unfortunately for Diamond, it's right in front of the school where all the main flow is right there. It's all those raised planters are a disaster, and it's unfortunate. One project I don't know if you guys looked at is the museum. It's beautiful. It's really well done. The museum's got the budget to maintain it, and I think that's one of the projects we'd like to see more of.
I was real disappointed that I wasn't able to make the tour, and I guess one of the questions I'd have for staff or board members is, based on the tour, are there plant materials we should be discouraging people from using, or approaches to providing landscaping and amenities to road or school district projects that we should, again, be suggesting that the applicants move away from? I guess one of them is raised planters that you're not going to maintain aren't a real good idea.
Some of the thoughts I had maybe was, I haven't seen this in Alaska in the 6 years I've been up here, but I moved up from northwest Montana, and we would specify certified weed-free topsoil, and it's topsoil. Jeff, you'd probably have a better idea what it is, but it's basically where I think it's been cooked. There's no weed seed in it, and I think that's where a lot of our problems are coming from on some of these public projects. And I bet Jeff has a whole different take on it, because he probably has to deal with those weeds.
Dirt,
One item that I noticed there were some of the trees were these little clumps. I don't know what the...
Clump birch.
Clump birch, and it appeared like there was an issue with the survivability, or that there were, they may have some aesthetic appeal, but they weren't necessarily as hardy as having just a tree. So,
Yes.
Sharon can speak to that.
Patricia Joyner was on the tour, and she had mentioned that with some of the clump birch, that some of the stems, some of the, they have the multi-stems, and she pointed out some instances where the bark was going to be included, or the two stems will grow together at some point and be a maintenance headache, or probably have to be removed at that time. So it's just something more to think about when we see, a lot of multi-stem birch or clump birch on a project, that they could be short-lived because of that. It's just an inherent characteristic of the tree.
And those projects were Elise's projects, and I think her logic is that, well, maybe the moose will come and eat one of those.
And then you'll have the other two.
Numbers.
But I think the more recent thoughts among landscape architects is just to specify a bigger caliper tree to begin with. I mean, in the past, because the Muni code was a minimum caliper size of 1.5 inch, and so that's what everybody put out, and the moose can just snap that off, very easily. But now that we're seeing designers specifying a bigger caliper, like a 2.5 inch, it's less likely to happen. So that need to have a multi-stem birch may have gone away. We just specify a big birch to start with, a single stem, but if it's 2.5 inch caliper, then you don't have that problem with the moose anymore.
I think large-scale trees are definitely, or the larger trees are, fewer trees and larger, I think is really the one thing that you probably could start to notice at Diamond, but really is apparent at Ocean View and some of the schools that were built in the 90s, is you have beds that are completely overcrowded now that were overplanted in the 90s, and now that the plant material is mature, they're all touching each other. We overplant in this town a lot, and what it ends up being later is you just end up starting, in the 15-year cycle, you're going to just start removing trees or hedging, trimming trees back to beyond their natural state. And I think if you just use bigger material up front and fewer material, you get a better visual effect. And I guess, everybody's aware of my pet peeve is Martin Luther King Boulevard, and the fact that you send a project out, it went through this committee at 8-foot Black Hills spruce trees and somewhere in the nature of 2.5, 3-inch birch trees. And what's actually, if you guys took that tour, there's 3- and 4-foot Charlie Brown white spruce that got dug out of the field, and they're not only Charlie Brown trees, they're number 2 quality trees. They're field dug, they have bare sides on, and how that actually happens in the field to where it doesn't, it makes me wonder what this board approves anything for any reason. And that's a quite candid statement, but, that's how I feel about it. And it saved, the bottom line was at least $100,000 worth of plant material that was waxed on that job. And at what point does that not have to come back through here and get some kind of review, and maybe it's just, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just a follow-up to that. I think I mentioned to you all earlier that there was some talk of having a meeting between the Urban Design Commission and some of the landscape architects in town, wanting to just kind of talk about and wrestle with some of these issues that we've talked about, mainly, spacing of plant materials and versus horticultural practices, good horticultural practices versus their design intent, and wrestle with those issues. So I think sometime this fall or winter, we'll get together for maybe a noontime sort of meeting at the planning department in one of our conference rooms there, and invite everybody and see if we can come to some agreement here or understanding.
That'd be good. And I guess the tour sounded successful and something
Yeah.
that the board would like to do again next year?
Yeah, I think it's a good annual trip to do.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
So, that's great. Are there any other board comments tonight?
I have one more thing.
Sharon, sorry.
And that, as you're all aware, there are 2 vacancies on the commission with the departure of Patrick Coleman and Patricia. So I'm working on getting those filled. I can't push them any faster, the mayor's office, than they're going to move. But I am kind of tweaking them and letting them know that we need these filled. So that hopefully should be forthcoming.
Do we have some names that have gone forward?
I put some names forward, yes.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that they're going to be selected, but I did put 2 names forward.
Okay. Good. So we just got to wait for the mayor's office to get to us?
That's it.
Okay. Maybe we can encourage them. All right. Is that all for tonight, Sharon?
That's all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, motion to adjourn?
No, I'm not even that far yet. Okay.
Yeah. So moved, so approved, we're out of here. Oh, yeah, here we go.